On today's World Insight with Chin Wei, high-tech rivalry over 5G. Who'd likely end up the big winner and loser in the race? And what will likely come out of ongoing trade consultations between China and the U.S.? Professor Yuan Peng sheds some light.
We should be more confident. We should be more brave.
Hello and welcome to World Insight with me, Tian Wei. The program is coming to you live on CGTN. We begin with the battle over 5G in the U.S. The fourth largest U.S. mobile carrier, Sprint, is suing the second largest carrier, AT&T, for labeling its network as 5G when it's actually 4G. The complaint is a step toward a legal standard in the burgeoning 5G space and could trigger an embarrassing, some say, rollback for AT&T in its marketing if the judge rules in Sprint's favor. For more, let's take a look at this.
U.S. telecom providers are griping over 5G. The second largest U.S. mobile carrier, AT&T, has branded parts of its 4G network as 5GE or 5G evolution. This drew criticism from competitors that offer the same network technologies. Now Sprint is suing AT&T, arguing that its ad is deceptive. For its part, AT&T argues the lawsuit is Sprint marketing. Besides this, last year, Qualcomm accused Apple of stealing its chip-making secrets and giving them to rival Intel. All these lawsuits have underscored the importance of technology, and 5G is undoubtedly the most important of them. Real 5G networks could enable mobile speeds of around 10 gigabits per second, about 10 times faster than the standard fiber connection. It promises faster speed, reduced latency, and greater bandwidth. It's the race for a key piece of high technology that will well determine the future of global innovation.
For more on the competition over 5G, even within the United States, joining us in Boston, Robert Siciliano, who is a security analyst with HOTSPOT Shield. Sir, good to see you. In Brussels, Bruno LIEBHABERG, who is the Director General of the think tank Center on Regulation in Europe. Welcome as well. Last but certainly not least, in our Beijing studio, we have Dr. Xiaodong Li, who is a professor and director of the ICT Laboratory for the Internet Infrastructure at the Chinese Academy of Sciences. Welcome as well. I want to start by asking you, Robert, in the U.S., what do you make of this latest lawsuit between AT&T and Sprint, the second and the fourth largest carrier in the United States?
You know, it's not surprising that AT&T would make these, what many consider, and I consider, a false claim. You know, with politics as they are in the U.S. and AT&T making significant financial donations to the Trump campaign, they probably feel that they essentially could get away with this misleading advertising. It is likely that the Federal Trade Commission, the Federal Communication Commission, are in fact paying attention, and that they may or may not, based on AT&T's relationship with the Trump administration, levy fines. They have paid dearly in the past for false advertising, and in this case, every single publication that is mentioned is showing that there is in fact no 5G speeds when AT&T is advertising such.
Bruno, however, on the other hand, people say, well, this is also a very smart marketing strategy for Sprint. After all, with this lawsuit being publicized all over the world, it's actually bringing a lot of attention about 5G potential for Sprint as well. Bruno?
Oh, sorry, I didn't know that the question was for me. Oh, sorry, nice to be on the program.
Thank you, sir.
Yes, clearly, you know, we have a huge tension on the 5G. It's just like, you know, the race is starting, and the cars are on the grid, and everybody's trying to take some advance. But the reality is that for the moment we have no 5G anywhere else, anywhere in the world. So I think that this is marketing gimmick, and from a European perspective, I don't think there's much else we can add.
Dr. Li, Xiaodong, in Beijing, this is not the only lawsuit that you see that's going on right now, but also, for example, the one between Apple and Qualcomm, that certainly also has a lot to do with 5G, given the relationship between Qualcomm, Apple, and Intel when it comes to chips. So why do you think there are so many lawsuits these days regarding or related to 5G? What's going on there, Xiaodong?
I think it's no doubt that the 5G will become the truth in the next maybe 2 or 3 years. So I just think that this should just like the rehearsal for the future competition between the players. It's just like the Sprint and AT&T is the telecom carriers, but there is a lot of suit among the manufacturers. Even there is some kind of argument among the countries. So I think it's a very good start for the competition.
Very good start for the competition. Robert, what about that competition within the United States now? Of course, we are only talking about, the one between two mobile carriers like Sprint and AT&T, but the competition is much more than that, much more than that level also.
Well, it's certainly a saturated market, and AT&T has been, a leader for quite some time, and maintaining market share, of course, is their main goal. Studies that have been conducted by Sprint in precipitation of this lawsuit showed that more than half of consumers believe that that 5G logo that is displayed on the phone's home screen means that there are in fact faster speeds. So this in fact is a positive for AT&T, meaning that consumers in fact believe that they are getting faster speeds when in fact they're not.
Well, the faster speed probably is only one of those reflections of how technology like 5G will be able to bring to us when it comes to changing our lives. The increased transmission speed from 4G to 5G is expected to set up a new wave of digital economic growth. Take a look at this, empowering emerging industries like the self-driving cars, Internet of Things, virtual reality, drones, smart cities, mobile healthcare, you name it. Many of these developments depends on a faster speed as we speak. And the faster speed is closely related to 5G, which is revolutionize the way likely we live. And therefore, Bruno, to you, how is 5G, if you look at it on a global basis, not just limited to this lawsuit going on in the United States, but global basis, where should we expect it to be? Are we seeing very different development stages in different parts of the world?
I think first it's clear, and you're absolutely right, that 5G is totally different from anything we've known so far. 5G is the foundation, as you said, of both the Internet of Things and the machine-to-machine communications, but it's also the eyes and ears of artificial intelligence systems, as it will provide real-time data collection and analysis. And finally, 5G will also bring the cloud a new dimension. So in addition, you see that this is not just about the usual telecom players. And that's why, I was in my previous intervention, I was just not overestimating what's happening in the States, looked from a global perspective, because 5G will involve all industries, manufacturing, healthcare. It will involve the public sector. Public safety issues are at stake. We are trying here in Europe to develop pan-EU 5G corridors for connected and automated mobility.
Right.
And so all those players will have to work together with telecom and with tech companies. And just to finish this, in addition, there will be new players, there will be new kids on the block, and there will be new business models. And that is going to be a challenge for regulators and policymakers.
When we talk about policies and regulations. Xiaodong, I have to go to you about that because the standard, as we speak, when a technology is being developed, particularly when it comes to penetration, application, very important. So where does that standard for 5G now comes from? We do not know yet, Xiaodong. There's something called 3GPP, which is something that a platform that many of the players come on and try to figure out a standard. But do we have a standard now, internationally speaking, Xiaodong?
Yes. We actually have some standard which will be used for 5G. Two key players for the standard making is the ITU and the 3GPP. The ITU is an internationalized organization which making the standard. And the 3GPP in some sense is an industrial standard body. So which was supported by so many manufacturers, carriers. So it's a very strong body for the standard for 5G.
Bruno, do you believe so? Because you are exactly with your colleagues working on regulations regarding the 5G in Europe for the future. Is there a standard that the world will subscribe to right now? And what does that say, the debate about that, to us?
Yeah. Thank you. The Center on Regulation in Europe, CER, has published 2 years ago already a quite important report, and that shows that because 5G is different, we need, when developing policy and regulation,
wait, Bruno.
to leave space for innovation.
Why is it so different? Okay, you have to explain to us why is it different this time.
Well,
5G is not like a 3G or 4G.
It's basically different because it is just not an increment compared to 3G or 4G to communicate more quickly, voice and data. But it's really moving to a different world, as I mentioned. Internet of Things, machine-to-machine communications, artificial intelligence. I could have added the cloud, where you will have, because of without 5G, you could not have distributed computing and storage throughout the new infrastructure. So because of that qualitative difference, you need to be very careful when setting policy and regulation, because we don't know, we should not assume we know how 5G will look like in its details. So that's why I'm convinced that policy and regulation need to leave space for innovation, to leave space for the new business models, to leave space also for newcomers.
Well, Robert, I'm sure you know this very well. I mean, what is the role of regulations? What would be the role of technology development, the role of applications, the role of regulations, and also the role of, let's just say, patents? How will these different factors work together? With the recent lawsuits going on, whether it is earlier mentioned Sprint and AT&T or Apple and Qualcomm, what is driving our thoughts right now?
So money is driving
very blunt and direct answer, I have to say, my friend.
So, we are not in uncharted or unprecedented territory. We've gone from dial-up connections in the 90s to gigabit communications speeds today, and we've seen web pages taking forever to load, to multimedia video being played throughout the world. And the 5G technology will exponentially allow for not just basic communications, but the facilitation of what my colleagues mentioned as far as AI and everything else.
Right.
And there it will be a lot of growing pains and a lot of market grab over the next 3 to 5 years. And so there will be more lawsuits. There will be patent trolls that will pop up left and right that will try to take their piece of the action. And so, within the next decade, as all of this completely rolls out, you'll see a lot of innovation stifled as a result of impending litigation.
I see. Xiaodong, as an engineer, as a computer scientist yourself, are you worried about that potential? I mean, in a way, it is money that is driving the discussion rather than technology and the application of technology itself.
I have no worry. Yeah.
All right, let me hear about your optimism.
You know that money is a driving force for so many technology revolution. So in some sense, you know, money can support the technology development. So I love that. So I do believe that for the 5G, money should be a very, very important factors. But eventually, I don't want that as an engineer. I don't want money cover everything. I hope that the technology revolution can make some changes for the business model and to delight the people, to improve the life of the people, not only money.
Right. But, you know, Bruno, here's the thing. If you think about the different stages of industrial revolution, of course, you have, you know, the machinery, and you have the internet, and now you come to a stage in which probably the speed of changes is likely to be partially decided by the technology of 5G. Then here comes the important question too, complicated it, which is the geopolitics as well. So earlier we talked about whether it's the money, it's the technology, the application, or it is the patents related to this that's driving the change. What about when you have more complicated issues like geopolitics these days also involved? Where is it driving us to, Bruno?
I think, you know, let's call it by its name.
Okay.
We have issues around 5G today, and the issues that those issues are exemplified by the way each region is looking at Huawei. And I think that is probably your question. From my perspective, I think things are quite clear. I think we need to look at a three-tier perspective. We need to look at security, we need to look at trade, and we need to look at cooperation. I think for security, you see that there are a growing number of issues which are being raised in a number of regions in the world, not only in the US, but in Canada, in Japan, and the EU. We've heard already in Poland some issues, and the UK. I think from a European perspective, it's legitimate for the EU to be concerned about its security and about the security of its citizens. And I see that the UK, which has been a long-standing supporter of Huawei equipment, now through its cybersecurity evaluation centers, says that we can only offer limited assurances on Huawei's 5G equipment. So I think that's one piece of the equation.
Okay, and the other piece of the equation?
But it's not the only one.
Yeah.
The two other pieces of the equation are the trade issue and the cooperation issue.
Right. Here I want to
I think that the...
Go ahead, sir.
The EU's trade policy is, and I think this is acknowledged everywhere, and I hope our Chinese friends will accept that as well, that our policy is not aligned on anybody's, and certainly not on the US.
All right, then. Let's go to
But I think it's fair to say also that China, just let me finish this, please. China cannot expect no reaction on behalf of the EU if it was to maintain asymmetric closed market and trading practices.
Okay. So, Xiaodong, let me ask you.
And I think this is the second piece.
Please let also the guest from the other side to respond as well. Xiaodong, let me ask you about that too. When a new technology is being related to so many different factors, well, you see it's not just Huawei, but also even telecommunication companies around the world, whether it's from Japan, Australia, in the United States, or in Europe. They are all working so hard to be the leader of this industry and compete in whichever way they could. So how do you see 5G today, as complicated as it is, compared to the earlier rounds of, let's just say, 3G or 4G? how should we eventually look at the evolution that is going on right now, Xiaodong? It's a long question, but I hope I have provide a philosophical ground for you and the other panelists to answer the question. Xiaodong, briefly.
Okay, I think it's a long question, but I try to give you a short answer.
Thank you, sir.
I think if you look at the importance of 5G, we can just compare the 2G and 1G, because when we enable 2D, we enable the data. So now 5G is not only for the data, because we can have more data with the much bigger bandwidth and with a lower cost. So that means it's a very revolutionized technology for the mobile internet. And it's a very key technology for the infrastructure. So that means within this infrastructure, we support so many applications with so many devices connected.
Right.
It'll be a big changes for the future, and for the business model, for the politics, for the, in some sense, everything which rely on the infrastructure.
Right.
That's the key factors.
Okay, before we go, we have 1 minute left for the other panelists. Robert, before we go, also to you about that, how will this 5G competition and cooperation help us to understand the next round of industrial revolution in a way, and also different roles or factors likely to play in this round? Is it really likely to be as usual, or this one is going to be quite different? Robert.
So I think that you're going to see consumers are going to begin to make more investments into the telecom providers themselves, the AT&Ts and the T-Mobiles and the Sprints of the world, opposed to the cable companies. They will no longer be tethered to modems and routers, where they'll be using their mobile devices for primary communications, for hotspots and so on. And that it's going to significantly impact the cable companies. And you can see that the telecoms are already offering, or they have been offering multimedia as far as television and so on. And that is going to change the landscape of the consumer consumption because of 5G.
Well, within the industry, between the consumers and the industry, among governments as well, probably a new, different way of looking at where the world and the technologies are heading for. This is all food for thought as a result of what's going on right now with the 5G development. Thank you so much for the three of you bringing us different perspectives. Robert Siciliano, Bruno LIEBHABERG, and also Xiaodong Li. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for being with us. And you're watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. Still to come on our program. What will likely come out of the ongoing trade consultations between China and the United States? Professor Yuan Peng, a well-known Chinese scholar on U.S.-China relations, sheds some light right after this break. Welcome back. You're still watching World Insight with me, Tian Wei. We now move on to efforts to settle disputes between China and the U.S. The U.S. delegation has arrived in Beijing for a new round of high-level economic and trade consultations. From February the 14th to 15th, Chinese Vice Premier Liu He will hold consultations with U.S. Trade Representative Robert Lighthizer and Treasury Secretary Stephen Mnuchin in Beijing. Building on the recent consultation in Washington, the two sides will again talk about issues of common concern. The ongoing consultations are a re-examination of trade ties, whether the two sides will go in the same direction. In this regard, we picked the brains of Yuan Peng, the president of the China Institute of Contemporary International Relations. This is part of our special series, An Updated Vision, a review and outlook for China's diplomatic strategies for the year 2019. Let's listen in about what he had to say.
Yeah, March the 1st is the deadline for the 90 days trade negotiation set by the two presidents in Argentina summit. So all the world people are watching that. The good news is that before the deadline is coming, the two teams are working very hard to do their best to achieve the final deal. It seems the process goes relatively smooth and in a positive direction. So we hope in the March 1st, both sides can achieve a more comprehensive deal. Even that.
What is a more comprehensive deal to you?
At least they will achieve a minimum, deal. We cannot expect that through a single trade deal to resolve all structural problems which lasted 40 years. And both sides are realistic to watch the deadline. But at least before the March 1st, both sides want to have a deal. Looks good, and also good for the future, more deeper negotiation and cooperation, I think. So March 1st is the timeline to set the tone for the post-90 days U.S.-China relations.
But Professor Yuan, on the other hand, is China that desperate to reach a deal with the U.S. on March the 1st? Because it's a negotiation. The other side could well take advantage of this urgency China feels and push forward more demands within this framework, hard for China to be able to resolve.
I think it's not a one-way deal. It's bound to benefit to both sides. It's not just American give us lists, we respond. Chinese side always will also have our own list. So both sides need to make some compromise. This is the essence of the negotiation. But even if some structural problems cannot be resolved this time, I think the Chinese still confident that we can manage the difficulties ahead, because we did the 2018 experience tells Chinese a lesson that Chinese we should be more confident, we should be more brave
cool-minded also
in accepting the strategic competition with the #1 superpower in the States. So 2019, on the one hand, we hope soft landing of the trade dispute, but on the other hand, we are fully prepared for the difficulties ahead. But March 1st is a timeline for shaping the post-90 days U.S.-China relations. If some deal be reached, then we can have a new start to think about longer-term U.S.-China relations.
Relations with the United States, though important, is not the only thing China is dealing with at this time. Professor Yuan Peng also talked about moving China's goalpost from being rich to being a strong nation and to find its own way in a new era. Professor Yuan, in some earlier occasions, you were talking about your understanding of the logic, why the American side, particularly the current administration, chose the approach as they did in 2018 toward China. Very hard approach. Would you like to share with us?
So I think that the trade war do have some strategic consideration behind that. The reason for that is that #1 is China is now undergoing transformation of a Chinese model. So if the trade war cannot be handled well, maybe it's a very disaster for Chinese economic growth or rising. #2, I think Trump is good at using trade method to achieve his American First strategy, and which also were pleased his supporters in the States. And China is a major target for this. And #3 is that high tech still American grasp the advantages. Using high tech as a tool, maybe they think it's much easier for them to avoid a military confrontation or ideological conflict, but at the same time can achieve its strategic goal to contain China from rising too fast.
But the U.S.-China relations is much beyond who Trump is, isn't it?
Yeah, because now we have to face three different Americas. Trump is just one part of America. On the other hand, we have the establishment power. Still, they are still look China in a strategic way. And thirdly, there is a deep state power behind that. They are working very hard to dig every elective parts of China. So how to deal with the three different America simultaneously is a new challenge to Chinese-American policy. So both sides are thinking about how to deal with the other side.
Right.
American is thinking about that, but they don't have a concrete policy and answers.
And does China have?
China is also thinking about that, but Chinese today is more responsive to American policy. So how to find a new way, rather than just respond, but to shape American environment. This is a new task for Chinese-American policy to do in the next few years.
It is no secret that the U.S.-China relations has always been an important component of China's own path of searching of its own identity. But on the other hand, it is not all. After all, China has to do its own things well. So how will that search of U.S.-China relations, the tangle between the two, fit into the overall picture China is looking at itself right now, not just to the U.S., but also to the others in the world?
Yes, U.S.-China relations is the most important bilateral relations for China, but it's not the only important relations. We have also other important relations like China-Russia, like European, like Japanese, China-Japanese relations. So how to balance all those relations with the different powers and put U.S.-China relations in a proper position.
Looking at 2019, you got several timelines and several important events and occasions. For example, you've got the 70th anniversary, the PRC celebration. That's going to be a big one. So how is China going to look at itself 70 years of its international relation path and figure out the new one, or maybe gradually figure out a new one? Professor Yuan.
Yeah, number one, China now is entering a new era. Like 19th Party's Congress report mentioned, like President Xi mentioned many, many times, now we're entering a new era. The new era means that China now moving from a rich to strong. How to make Chinese richer is a major task in past 40 years. Now in next 30 years or 40 years, the major task is how to make Chinese from rich to strong. Strong means more comprehensively. Rich just means economically speaking. Strong means not only economic but also military, scientific, cultural. So this is the major transformation of Chinese grand strategy. So in terms of this, I think China today we are more confident than before. So confidence is our new feature.
While China is being confident, will others also be the winner in this process?
Of course, because Chinese confidence is comparatively speaking, compare China from last century, compare China from 70 years ago, 40 years ago. So we're bound to be more confident based on Chinese new achievements in past 40 or 70 years. But this not necessarily means that we are winner takes all. We still pursue the so-called win-win cooperation. We don't like Americans said that win-win means win twice.
G20 summit likely to be in Japan June, and therefore you see the world leaders all going there, including China and Americas. But on the other hand, it's not just bilateral relations. It's also about China's multilateral approach on top of the March 1st U.S.-China possibility to reach a deal. Professor Yuan, how will China be able to balance and incorporate the development of the other relationship into the overall mechanism China will embrace?
Yeah, G20 meeting in Japan is another chance and a platform for the major powers in the world, 20 countries, to sitting together, to working together on thinking about the future trade and the economic, picture in the future, which is not so. It's not so focused in 2018 Argentina G20 summit. So Japanese G20 in Tokyo should be more focused on, for example, the future of WTO, the future economic trade order. But on the other hand, beside that, there are several bilateral relations, bilateral activities like U.S.-China leaders meeting, China-Russian, and most importantly, this year is Chinese-Japanese relations. Because if that's the case, it means Chinese leaders, the first time in many years, to visit Tokyo, visit Japan. How this means for China-Japanese relations matters, for Chinese overall diplomacy. I think maybe if you put U.S.-China relations in focus, seems lots of difficulties and even contradictions. But if we look China-Japanese, China-European, China-Russian, China-India relations, all those bilateral relations are improving.
I just wonder, from your perspective, the mindset of Chinese intellectuals when you look at the international relations these days, particularly the complicated situation China is facing right now.
We are living in the great era, which means the unprecedented era in 100 years. So we are fortunate that lots of new things, new cases, new affairs happen every month, every week, or even every day. So lots of surprise. Those surprises for average people maybe it's not a good thing, but for international researchers it should be very exciting.
A lot of food for thought.
Yeah. But at the same time, because of every day we face different issues and affairs, there is a very big test for our knowledge, for our wisdom, for our method to think. So how to embrace the new era is a very big task for Chinese intellectual circle, in particular for those international relations circle.
There's probably one balance you have to help us to understand how you and your peers are going to be able to keep. On the one hand, 200 years, China has been occupied, China was in war, China was forced into war by the others, China was in civil wars, and there is a victim mindset, as some say. However, when you look at China's recent development over the past 40 years, rapid. It's the pride of the world. And as a result, China has this confidence. So how, in a way, balance these two very different directions of looking at oneself and the world and come up with a cool-minded approach? Professor Yuan, I'm sure you're thinking about that almost every day.
Not every day, maybe occasionally. More than two. I think more than two mindset.
Complex.
For example, it's very complex. For example, Chinese people, we have a very proud for 5,000 years of civilization, and we are also has a victim, mindset because of from 1840s up to now, and we are very much independent from 1949 when PRC was established. And in the past 40 years, with the success of the reform and opening up, Chinese now is more and more confident, optimistic. So it's a very complexity of Chinese mindset. How to combine all different mindsets together, find a proper and rational mindset is not only test Chinese leadership, but also test all the average Chinese people. But for those researchers on international relations, we must have cool-minded, otherwise we will have a wrong judgment. judgment of the situation, then provide some wrong policy recommendations. So how to maintain a sober, serious, cool-minded thinking on domestic and international affairs, I think is the most important challenge to us.
But how? That is the most important question.
No matter what happened, several things should build in our mind all the way. Number one, be confident, which means we can overcome all the difficulties ahead. Number two.
That's a can-do spirit, isn't it?
Yeah. Number two, be humble, which means when you deal with something, should be more modesty. And number three, should be more careful, because so many traps ahead. We should very, very carefully to do everything. And finally, I think we should be very optimistic. We should believe that tomorrow want to be more brighter than today.
Professor Yuan, it's always a pleasure talking to you. Thank you so much, sir, for being with us.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. That's our talk with Professor Yuan Peng, one of the leading scholars in China on China's future strategies. That is all the time we have for today. If you'd like to see more, try to find us World Insight CGTN into your search engine, or check out our YouTube channel. Also follow us on Twitter, Facebook, and Sina Weibo. From me, Tian Wei, and everyone on the World Insight team, thanks for watching. Tune in again next time for insights across China and around the world. Good night.